question. Mr. Levine, I recently introduced the bipartisan Robocall Traceback Enhancement Act with Senator Markey to help bolster privately led efforts to trace back the origins of illegal robocalls. Can you speak to the FTC's efforts on engaging with industry initiatives like the Robocall Traceback Group and whether this public-private partnership has been successful in identifying illegal robocaller actions?
Absolutely, Senator. And first of all, thank you for your leadership on this issue and on the TraceStat as well. It has been a successful partnership, but let's not kid ourselves. There's a lot more work to be done. The FTC has brought 150 lawsuits. We're moving upstream, targeting VoIP providers. We're blasting billions of calls into Americans' homes and pockets, but a lot more needs to be done if we're going to take on this scourge.
Well, and I hope that you can continue to advise us, too, on things that we can do to give you more tools. But we do want to make sure that these partnerships that we've called for are hopefully functioning and working in an effective way. And I would follow up with Mr. Leatherman virtually, if you could elaborate on the coordination between industry and enforcement officials to make the traceback efforts effective, and then perhaps also address the question of whether there are other tools Congress should consider providing attorneys general to meet the challenge of tracking illegal robocallers. Mr. Leatherman?
I don't know whether we have Mr. Leatherman still.
Okay.
Oh, there he is. Mr. Leatherman.
Sorry about that.
Did you hear the question?
I did not hear the question. My internet just blinked out. So would you repeat it, please?
I don't know if you heard my first question from Mr. Levine, but I wanted to ask if you could elaborate on the coordination between industry and enforcement officials to make the traceback efforts effective. This comes back to the issue of robocalls. And as a follow-up, are there other tools Congress should consider providing state attorneys general to meet the challenge of tackling illegal robocallers?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. And thank you for your leadership on the issue involving robocalls. As you're aware, I think there's been a number of cases brought recently by state attorneys general using tools that have been made available through the Traceback Act, and those efforts are ongoing. There have been a number of cases brought recently targeting illegal activity conducted on networks, and so the networks themselves had been subject to law enforcement action. So in the past, it was difficult to obviously sue all of the scammers, and so the AGs have been very effective in targeting networks that are knowing.
Mr. Leatherman, I think we've lost you again.
Yeah. I think we've lost you. Mr. Chairman, let me come back to Mr. Levine here. And this is a separate issue, but not has to do with a concern I've had for a long time about the big four meat packers' dominance and control over beef processing capacity and cattle supply in this country. Packers are enjoying excessive profits while cattle producers and family farm and ranch operations like those in my home state of South Dakota struggle to stay in business. At the same time, consumers are left paying record high prices for beef, and most of the time, they aren't even sure where it's coming from because of the product of the USA labeling loophole, which is entirely another issue. But I remain very concerned with potential improper or anti-competitive activity in the beef sector, and I'm encouraged that this administration has prioritized oversight of this highly concentrated industry, and I'm wondering what your views are with respect to the FTC using its Section 6B authority to investigate these meatpacking companies.
Well, Senator, I certainly share your interest in this issue. I'd want to raise that with my colleagues in the Bureau of Competition who'd have more knowledge on that particular issue. But I just want to jump off something you said about product of USA beef. One of the things we did at the FTC last year is finalize a rule that prohibits mislabeling products made in USA when they're from overseas. But as you referenced, Senator, we know that when Americans are shopping for beef, it might say product of USA on the label, but that cattle could have been born, raised, and slaughtered overseas. This isn't only bad for consumers, this is bad for the ranchers in your state and across the country who are being cheated by misleading labels. We stand ready to work with the USDA on this issue to protect all consumers from misleading product of USA or made in USA labels.
Thank you, and I hope that you will take a look at the other issue that I mentioned on the FTC with respect to the concentration and dominance and control that a handful of meat packers have. But I appreciate you addressing the issue of labeling, because it is misleading to consumers in this country when product that comes in from outside the U.S. attracts the USA label, and it doesn't represent an animal that was born, raised, and harvested here in the United States. And so this is an issue that has been around for a long time. We've addressed it in a couple of farm bills. It continually gets challenged at the World Trade Organization, and we have not been willing to defend the legislation that has passed previously here in the Congress that would provide mandatory country of origin labeling. I'm glad that you all are moving forward to try and close that loophole. I hope that you will use the powers that your agency has and the authorities that it does to continue to try and tighten up so we can get to a point in this country where everything that we put in the center of our plate has the same requirements of the clothes we wear. There isn't your tie, my tie, it'll all say made in some other country. We've got labeling on everything except the stuff that we eat. It makes absolutely no sense. It's an issue that's just flat, has to be addressed. I've got a bill with Senator Tester to do that, but to the degree that you all have regulatory authority, I would encourage you to continue to exercise it in a way that allows American consumers to be able to differentiate when they go to the supermarket or the grocery store products that are born, raised, and harvested here in the United States and those that are not. I think it's an important distinction to be made and something that consumers around this country desperately want to see. Thank you.